Welcome to another episode of the Pennock Knockdown, a podcast where we unpack key strategies and tactics that help digital marketers. Today, I've got Noyonika on the line with us. She is an account strategist at Google for UK, Ireland, and somewhere else I'm already forgetting, right, Noyonika?
UK and Ireland.
Okay, UK and Ireland. I did get it right. So thank you for coming on the show today. I'm so excited to have this conversation.
Thank you for having me, Nikki. I'm really looking forward to chat with you and learn more about.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's kind of go back into your history channel. What were you doing prior to joining Google?
It's a long story, and Google has always been my dream company to work for. But education-wise, I was learning psychology and sociology when I was doing my undergrad in India. While I was doing the courses, I was really interested in the way consumers behave to market trends and brands, which pushed me to learn more about fashion. And I applied for my master's course in the School of Design, Parsons School of Design in Paris, where I got through on a scholarship, and I learned fashion communication and business. And in my course, I learned more about the deep history of fashion. I learned more about archiving, how the press industry worked alongside the business behind it. And I completely based my thesis in my COVID time to make it more relatable, which was about the evolution of photography and media. And I really wanted to learn how brands react to the evolution of media when it was COVID. And there were so many things processing and how the digital maturity of brands look like. So I applied for many internships, and one of the first internships I got through was in the hotel industry as a community manager for Accor hotels. And it was quite different and quite interesting to see how the luxury group of hotels were changing and slowly opening up during COVID, and how the marketing was evolutionizing at that time, and how it was more community oriented online, and how community rewards were a big force behind bringing in the visitors back. Then I was also working in the marketing industry for larger companies as the digital marketing assistant for the EMEA region. So my main work was more on the data side, that is to produce enough data and result correspondence of the goals that the EMEA region sets out, and effectively communicate that with the New York team when they do the visits in September. It was very challenging and demanding work, but I enjoyed presenting and simplifying information for the bigger team. And after that, I also worked back in an agency called Publicist, where I was mainly handling the account of Valentino Beauty, Yves Saint Laurent Beauty with L'Oreal. And my main task was again to look into the content direction and marketing space, and how the agency can also push the limits of different ways of interaction with the audience, how the content shapes the e-commerce space, how the content can be pushed further to design a brand value. I remember when I joined, YSL was kind of undergoing a website relaunch because I wanted to focus more on the whole Morocco and the ingredient side of how the ingredients arrive. So we had a big push on that, and to like relaunch the website with a bigger push on sustainability and the arm of fashion and tech, because they also launched a new product which was a mix of lipstick which you could actually mix. So all of these changes like really shaped my interest in tech and fashion and how they're integrating, which is why I was always curious to explore roles in Google and see how the tech industry can be a part of everyday life, especially beauty and fashion, which is something which is so important for somebody who wakes up and looks at yourself, and the one thing that is very certain is how you look. So in Google, I found out that there are so many ways AI and tech has been involved in everyday beauty brands and how the way they have been shaping campaigns. And I applied to Google, and yes, I got the job, and now I kind of handle how to integrate AI in the everyday decisions of marketing and how to shape your marketing and brand growth with better business results.
That's a lot. Okay, so it sounds like leading into where you are today, you had they were digital marketing, but they were kind of like generalist digital marketing. You didn't really talk about specific marketing channels. Is that correct? So you were kind of like strategizing and kind of overseeing how different parts of digital marketing played together, but you were not like organic search or paid ads. You were kind of doing general digital marketing. Is that correct?
When I was working in other brands, it was more organic and also a lot more focused on meta, versus now it's more on the paid media side, because when on the brands depend on a lot of organic results to drive the organic presence, which is already why the brands are so established, like Tom Ford Beauty, Saint Laurent Beauty. They always want to have the organic presence grown and then have the boost behind them. So organic was a very big component, and creativity was one of the biggest factors that kind of drove the organic decisions.
Got it. Okay. And then now where you are at Google, is the work you're doing primarily within the Google Ads platform space, or is it again kind of spanning more of Google than Google Ads?
It's a bigger part of my job is like kind of helping them grow in Google Ads. We have every brand and every business starts with Google. So it's interesting to see how many touch points a user can go through and how much a Google can impact the business decisions for every user, be it from shopping or be it to a lead generation business. It's very important to have the impact of Google in the right spots to really make the business work online as well as offline. So I think the journey of Google Ads is very significant in the brand's development process, and that is where my role sits in Google.
That's super cool. And I think like Google Teams, it's always a little bit of a black box what goes on over there. So it's really great to get some clarity. And I wonder, we work with at the agency, we work with a ton of Google reps. We've got a dedicated rep for our platform of brands, or our portfolio of brands rather. And then some of our brands have their own like kind of dedicated reps that we're speaking with in addition to our agency reps. Tell us a little bit about what you're finding as sort of early wins for the year 2026, builds or types of campaigns, objectives, even that are maybe coming forward that were not as front and center in 2025.
Very interesting question. I think as Google and as everything has been developing so fast, it's also important for the brands to keep up with the space of digital energy, which has also been evolving so fast. One of the most interesting shifts I have seen is in the rise of the vertical format of videos and how it has been such a major part of the advertising system. It has already been existing before with other apps like Meta and with Instagram, but the rise of advertisement space that is only a part of the vertical format of videos and images, because everything happens on the phone mainly today. And the number of people who interact with the ads vertically have been really very big number to see like how much importance that should be there on the assets and how the assets should be, which is exactly why Google has so many AI creative tools like Nano Banana, like Gemini, to help you create those assets faster and have more of a creative input without having, if you don't have the creative resources always missing, and it could be a challenge, which is why Google always has a backup for that. It's also quite cool to see how search and AI has integrated, and how that is why also it is so important to have the right kind of words, headlines, and assets on your websites and on your brands, so that when somebody is searching for you, AI naturally integrates information and makes sure that your ad comes on the top of the page, which is why broad search has been like the biggest winner in the advertising space. Like the long tail keywords have been the biggest boost for AI. And that is why when you search something, the search was before like find me a best pair of sneakers, but now find me a best pair of sneakers where I can do this, this, this. And exactly what Google does is integrates all those keywords and gives you options to shop as well as puts your brand high up on top. So yes, the mix of vertical format of assets and having the right AI mix in your brand, and also having the right, the pushing the assets on time really puts your brand up forward in the advertising space.
So that's all really insightful stuff. I think one of the things that we kind of see in the space is what you mentioned, like broad working a lot better for getting the tentacles out in the way you described. However, we do still see in many instances lower return on ad spend for broad. So I feel like that's a hard thing to balance with brands. Is like, okay, hang on to this. We really need this. And it's helping your business with some halo effect stuff, right? It might not be translating into a conversion that's trackable within the look back window. Usually it is, because our brands are all kind of like approachable price points that don't take more than 7 days to consider from beginning to purchase. But I think that the thing that is interesting to me is performance max campaigns and how much of performance max may or may not show up in search for brands, and whether or not brands need to continue having search as standalone, or if PMAX campaigns kind of fulfill overall needs for a newer business. Let's talk about a brand that's maybe spending like 10 to 15K total a month on Google Ads. And let's say it's a skincare beauty brand that has an average order value of like $75 to $100. If you were helping a brand in that situation, what do you think would be the setup for the Google Ads campaign strategy that you would go after?
Thanks. You're like a real client for me now in a Google environment. Yes. Firstly, I would try to mark the seasonality of the industry. So if it's a beauty industry, Q4 would be one of the biggest seasons for you to indulge in. So for Q4, I would prepare from the end of Q3. That is one of the first steps I would take. Secondly, I would make sure what has worked for you versus what has not worked for you in the last 2 years of the Q4 period as a back-end study to see how the Q4 period would look like for this season. And third, I would ask and understand what the hero products are for your brand. And do you want to remarket or do you want to bring in new customers? We have to like really know the strategy of the designer and the person because it's so subjective. You cannot push for a Google campaign without understanding what your goal is in the end. So if your goal is more of remarketing, we have different Google formats for that. Do you want to remarket one kind of product or do you want to remarket a bunch of products? What I think would work in Q4 is to remarket the hero products as a demand gen and in video reach campaigns because video reach campaigns have a shorter learning period and they work very faster and on multiple channels versus a demand gen campaign. And once the video reach campaigns would work, I would then push for a demand gen campaign. So that is the first approach I would take. With regards to search and PMAX, I would use that for another category of products depending on the brand and depending on the industry because skincare and beauty can have like different verticals as well. Like was it a supplement industry? Is it like more of a consultation? If you have a store which is physical and you want to bring people there, so that there are different requirements in each store and in each business. So I would dedicate separate Google campaigns for it each and have different budget but not split the campaigns. Consolidating campaigns is one of the best methods of enriching the conversion tracking value. I would also maintain a very high, like on the fundamental side, a very high ad score, a very high Opti score. Every 10% increase in the Opti score brings a 10% increase in conversion. So making sure like all these fundamentals are straight. And with regards to search, Max, I would firstly use the broad search for targeting people who are like the first time people, like people who are not sure about the brand yet, but have the intent to search because intent is where the discovery starts and then is where you Google it. And every $1 spent on Google brings $6 back to a business. That is like the Google fundamental formula. So that is why Google is the way to like search for a product. So I would use the broad tail search with AI enabled to kind of find new people, push the intent and have PMAX behind that for doing that because it is exactly why PMAX is there to like boost whatever is going on in the broad search. Then I would have another search campaign for exact match keywords and I would target specific audiences and negative keywords and very specific kind of people with that. So a mix of video reach campaign, PMAX, broad search and exact search could give you the desired results considering your business goals, considering like what your revenue would look like after the Q4, considering if you are in Q4, if you want to remarket, because Google also has NCA, which is a new enabled feature in PMAX, which you can use for targeting new customers. So if that is a goal, it should again be redesigned. So it is very subjective, but I would use the best features of each of the Google campaigns for the business. And that is how I would make a marketing mix for your brand.
That's perfect. I love everything you put in there. When it comes to exact match, just going back to search and the strategy you would go after there, let's actually talk about brand search. So I think that's something where we've got some brands who are like just the whatever gets the best ROAS, and sometimes it is just a couple brand name variations in exact match. And then we have other brands that are also obsessed with impression share and making sure they kind of dominate impression share for their own brand. These are brands that are also sold on like Ulta, Sephora, maybe Target, Walmart, and Amazon. And so the competition for them for their own brand is usually their wholesale partners or their retail partners. How do you think about brand search and like how broad phrase, like, exact how they all stack up within needing to show up from a brand perspective? And what do you personally think brands should prioritize when they think about their brand search?
Very good question. Thank you for that. I think if it's again depending on the goals of the person. If the industry is super niche, they prefer to use exact match keywords because they know who their clients are, they know what the clients would look like in the times of the year, and they know what products to push. And that is why they have search. They have normally have two search campaigns, unbranded and non-branded search with the exact match because they exactly know the audience behavior. But if you're again a new business and you want to learn about your audience, then you have to start using broad match and then exact match to kind of trickle down to the right path for the audience and again curate a series of ads for your audience, right? So that is the way I would go about because it's quite subjective.
Okay. Very helpful. Okay, you kind of mentioned when we kicked off on specifics here around what the website content is about, and probably a little bit more about the backend structure, the tagging, and to some extent, search engine optimization, answer engine optimization, all that fun stuff. Where would you say the majority of the brands you work with score on their website fundamentals that benefit not only this broader search environment of Google Ads or Google Ads platform rather, and also the organic side of Google? Because I know AEO and SEO are similar but different. So do you think a lot of brands are already positioned well for the new reality? Or would you say that's not the case?
In case of brands, I think so many brands are kind of Google is a very fast-paced industry, so people have to be really aware of the measurement side of things first, which is having an ads conversions, having all the first-party data in the system. So yeah, a lot of brands are missing sometimes the measurement part of their story. So in the measurement part, we have so many things, and that is exactly why we have Google Tag Gateway, which is a site-wide tagging feature available to ensure that none of the conversions are lost. So having this implemented is one of the first fundamental recommendations that we have for all the brands. And if you have again, then you have a business code, if you're an offline business as well, you should always have that list in the system integrated because it kind of tells the system where to look for the audience and how to look for it, especially if you have a demand gen campaign because it is for generating demand and finding the lookalike audiences. And then you have so many studies available in as what we give to the clients like search list studies, brand list studies, which help the clients understand the predictability of a campaign launch. So having all of these fundamentals set up would really help the client understand where the position of the brand is versus the market demands and what they need to do. But the biggest key information is doing things on time, because if you know the seasonality is Q4, you should make sure that these things are already quite prearranged before the season spikes, because that is very important to have things done there before the system has already learned and has information before you want to launch something new. So that is one of the biggest advice for all the brands out there. So do not wait, do it now, and make sure that your website is really up to date.
Yeah, makes sense. When you get a new client in your portfolio, what are some of the things you're really excited to see that they're already implementing? And then maybe what are some of your icks or the things that you're oh gosh, this again, and now we have to go fix this. What are sort of those best and worst practices you sometimes encounter with new brands?
Thanks for the question. I think the worst thing is to not have measurements and then see why is the results not working. So, okay, you have no first-party data in Google Ads, Google Analytics is not working. So having all of these small things set up is very important, especially Google Tag Gateway, because that is the one-stop solution for everything that you need in terms of conversions, tracking, recording, and integration of all Google platforms. So that is a frustration point, but also it is our job to educate the clients and tell them the importance of that and make sure that they do that before they launch another campaign or increase budget. I think one of the biggest interesting things that I see on the website is when the client is reluctant to do something, but I show them why they should do it and they do it and they see the results. Because a lot of the time there are a lot of like miscalculations about and apprehensions about launching a video, launching a different campaign. So my job is to kind of go ahead and tell them that it would do better with data and results and prediction results and tell them why they should at least try it out before they already have a mental barrier of saying no. So I investigate the brand and their previous history and the industry very well. And we have a lot of internal resources for that to do that, to make sure that the client pushes the boundaries and also like experiments with new things and gets the best back from Google, because there are so many solutions in Google for a business to grow. And it's amazing to see how many touch points a user has before finally buying a product. Like, be it a sneaker or a car, there are so many different touch points, and it is so interesting to see how Google can impact. Like, it can start from search and end up in a store to again come back with a contact form, lead form, which is like also a conversion activity. So it's super important to track everything and have that in place, as well as try out new formats of bringing in more business and revenue.
Love it. Can we go back to the tagging section for a second and just making sure the analytics are right? Because I know there's a lot of different ways one can track purchase. I think, right, you can integrate directly with Shopify. Most of the brands we work with are on Shopify. I think there's a Google Merchant Center version of it. There's GA4, right? Maybe I'm missing some or not describing them correctly. What is the ultimate like connection for making sure you're tracking purchases, in your opinion, in the way that Google Ads can read them the best when we're just talking pure e-commerce?
Definitely. So it again, like, just depends on the store offline and as well as online. So if you have offline tracking systems in place, it should definitely be in Google Ads to make sure that the Google Ads has the data. You can do that via customer match list. You can do that via enhanced conversions implemented for web, and if you're a lead gen for leads, and you can also do that via turning on the enhanced conversions in Google Analytics 4. So all these should be already done. And then you definitely have Google Tag Gateway that integrates all these information. And besides that, it's also important to have a cookie banner in your website. It's like a legal obligation in EU and in EEA states to have the consent banner and the consent mode activated. So all of these mixed is one of the part of Google Tag Gateway to make sure that every point of the tracking is tagged, even if the cookies are declined. And they should be primarily very easy to do if you're an e-commerce business, because it's mainly online. But if you are somebody who has like something which is half e-commerce and half lead, you should make sure to have a numerical value assigned to primary and secondary conversions. And if you're going into the depth, the secondary conversions could also be like submission of a contact form or thank you page click, but you should assign values based on the value of the item they're purchasing, at least 10 times more than the target CPE. So that is how you kind of assign the values for which is anything which is like lead gen. But if you have a mix of both, like multi e-commerce business, it is good to have values and make sure that the values are representing the conversion tracking that is going on in the system.
Love it. All right. Well, this was so much information for us today. I think one of the final questions we always like to ask guests before we wrap is, if you were going back a handful of years to the start of your career, what advice would you give yourself in that moment?
Very good question. I think the one advice I would give is ability to learn and move on faster. I think holding something for, I think, and reflecting on whatever has happened has definitely been one of the biggest, I would say, impacts of my past life, because I used to like always think, oh, that did not happen, this did not happen. But in the future, it always worked out. So I think not wasting my time thinking about what did not happen should have never been done, because it was like one of the things that really made me feel demotivated, question myself worth and value. So the ability to move on faster is, I think, one of the biggest gifts you can give yourself, and to forget whatever happened overnight, because I know it's tough, but The faster you forget, the faster you look for the next and the tomorrow, and the faster you learn.
Yeah, that's really good advice. Well, Noyonika, it was really good to have you on today's session. So thank you so much for your time. And thank you everyone for listening in today.
Thank you so much, Nikki. It was a delight to be here.
I appreciate it.